Hello and welcome to Miss White's Grade 10 Academic Math class. This is 7.5 Word Problems in Right Angle Trigonometry. And of course, by right angles, I mean a right angle triangle. So we can use sine, cos, and tan. We can also use Pythagorean theorem to solve our questions. So let's just jump right in. Example A, Shani and Anjali live in apartment buildings. The angle of depression from Shani's balcony to where Anjali's building touches the ground is 40 degrees. Okay, so let's pause. Angle of depression, that might be a new term for you. Angle of depression. Now the angle of depression is going to be measured off of the horizontal. Okay, and it will be going downwards, depression, downwards. So this is the angle of depression. Okay. And then you can also see that underneath it says the angle of elevation. It's going to be going from the horizontal upwards. The angle of elevation is not always the same as the angle of depression. Okay. So now Anjali's building touches the angle of depression from Shani's balcony to where Anjali's building touches the ground is 40 degrees. The angle of elevation from Shani's balcony to Anjali's balcony is 20 degrees. So that means Shani's balcony must be lower than Anjali's balcony because she has to look up at Anjali's balcony. Okay, so we're going to draw a diagram, and it's really important that you draw a nice accurate diagram. Well, not super accurate, but a good diagram that gives you some information. So here are our buildings, and here's the ground. Shani's going to be below Anjali, and that's the important part about this question. And we're going to find the angle of depression for Shani. So here is the horizontal, and she's looking down at Anjali's Anjali's building. And the angle there was going to be 40 degrees, right? The angle of depression. And then the angle of elevation. So as she looks up at Anjali's balcony, it's going to be 20 degrees. And we also know that Shani's height is 25.2. Now we're missing one important piece of information here, which is that these are actually right angle triangles. This is a right angle triangle because the ground is horizontal and the height of her balcony will be vertical, and horizontal things are, of course, perpendicular to vertical things. And so the same here, this is the horizontal, so this has to be perpendicular to the vertical, right? The vertical height. So that also tells us that this part is 25.2 meters from here to the ground. And so we want to know how far apart their buildings are. So I'm going to label that X, and I'm going to label the other little distance here Y from here to here, because I want to know the height of Anjali's balcony. Okay, so I'm going to redraw some of these triangles because there's a lot of triangles going on in here. So I'm going to redraw Shani's angle of depression. And so here's Shani. Maybe I'll label this P or something, P for point. This is going to be 40. And this is going to be 25.2. Now, you don't have to redraw these, but sometimes it helps if you've got a lot of triangles going on to just clear it up a little bit, right? Now, I want to know what X was. So X is going to be, I'm going to have to use tan here since I only know one side. I don't know two sides, so I can't use Pythagorean theorem. And this is the opposite here, and this is the adjacent, right? I don't know the hypotenuse, nor do I need it. Okay, so if you're trying to decide, you can use SOHCAHTOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tan is opposite over adjacent. And just check off the things that you know, right? I have the opposite. This one's the opposite. So I know the opposite. And I want to know the adjacent here and here. So you can see the only thing filled in is TOA, right? So I'm going to use tan 40 degrees. Tan 40 degrees. You'll notice I always write 40 degrees and not just 40. That's because in the near future, you guys are going to be using radians as well. So it'll be very confusing if you have radians and degrees. So you want to write degrees on whenever you have degrees. So opposite, that's 25.2 over adjacent, that's x. Now I'm going to have to solve for x. So I'm dividing by x, so to move it to the other side, I'm going to multiply tan 40 degrees. Remember, tan 40 degrees is one thing. You can't separate the tan and the 40. They go together. And now I want to get rid of this tan 40. These are multiplied together, so I'm going to divide on the other side. X equals 25.2 divided by tan 40 degrees. Like that. Okay, use your calculator and you will get 30.0 meters. Now, usually we round to 1 decimal place for distances, so that's why I've rounded to 1 decimal place here. Okay, so how far apart are their apartment buildings? They are 30.0 meters apart. Okay, now how high is Angeli's balcony? So I'm going to use the other triangle. If you want, you can redraw it. I will. You don't have to, but it helps sometimes. This was Y, and this was 20 degrees. Here's Shani, here's Angeli, here is the P point. And so I want to find Y. I do know now X, which is 25.2, so I'll put that into the diagram. And you can see that Y is the opposite of 20, right? 25.2 is the adjacent. So using SOHCAHTOA, and you don't have to write out SOHCAHTOA and do these check marks, but sometimes it helps as you start learning it to have a visual aid. And then the adjacent, so you can see again, I know tan. So I'm going to use tan 20 degrees equals the opposite, which is Y, over the adjacent. Oops, you know what? I put 25.2, but it's actually 30.0. Whoops. Good thing I caught it before I did my question. So just be careful. Actually, it'd be nice if I had labeled this here in my original diagram, then I wouldn't have made a mistake. So y over 30.0, and to get rid of this 30, I'm going to multiply by the other side. So 30 tan 20 degrees. Type that in your calculator, and you get y equals 10.9. So y is 10.9 meters, so the height of Angeli's balcony is 25.2 plus the 10.9 here. So again, I'm just relabeling it on my original diagram. So 25.2 plus 10.9 is equal to 36.1 meters. Angeli's balcony is 36.1 meters high. So I'm making sure that I'm answering the question. It is a word problem, so we want to have a concluding statement on there, okay? I'm going to reread the question. Make sure how far apart are their apartment buildings? They're 30 meters apart. How high is Angeli's balcony from the ground? It is 36.1 meters high, so I've got all of the information that is asked for, and I am done with this question. Okay, we're going to try another one. This is my last one. Example B. Noah and Cyril are standing across a river flowing east-west from a large rock on a cliff. The rock is due north of Noah and is at an angle of elevation of 61 degrees. For Cyril, the angle of separation between Noah and a point directly below the cliff is 52 degrees. If Noah and Cyril are standing 75 meters apart, find the height of the cliff. Ooh, this one is a big one, right? So first of all, we've got angle of elevation, which means we're going up and down. That's a vertical measurement, right? But also we've got east, west, and north, and angle of separation. Those are all going to be horizontal, okay? Horizontal. So if you looked down from above, let's say the cliff is here, the rock is here. Here's my rock. And I'm looking from above, then the rock is due north of Noah. So Noah is somewhere to the south, right? well, exactly south. And between them is flowing a river. And it's flowing exactly east-west, right? Cyril's standing on some point along the river. So this actually has to be in 90 degrees. So that's from above, yes? Now, we do have an angle of elevation, so I'm going to have to draw a 3D diagram. So I usually draw my 3D, I'll draw my height like this. So my rock is up here, right? And this is a cliff. And then I've got my river flowing. And then Noah is here, right? And so you can see that there is a point below the cliff, or below the rock, along the bottom of the cliff. And I want to know this height, right? Now remember that Cyril is here, so this has to be 90, right? I'm taking that 90 from here, and I'm putting it in here. And I'm just going to extend this line. So this is actually NC, and maybe I'll call this P for point. And PC is a 90-degree right triangle. And Noah and Cyril are standing 75 meters apart, so I can put that in. And also we know that Cyril sees an angle of separation between Noah and a point directly below the rock, that's P, at 52 degrees. So from Cyril's point of view, so Cyril is the vertex, the angle of separation between the two from Noah to the point is 52 degrees. Okay. There's one more thing that we do know, which is the angle of elevation. We're going to assume the river is horizontal because that's how water works. And so we can measure the angle of elevation for Noah right here. So this part, this here, is standing straight up. This line is coming out towards you. And this here is flat along the ground. Okay? That's how that works. So this is the angle of elevation of 61 degrees. This is horizontal, and the height is vertical, which tells you that there is another 90 in here. Okay? So I've got two triangles stuck together, and I'm going to put them flat so you can see them. This takes a little bit of practice. But once you get the hang of it, it gets better. So here's the rock, here's the point below it, and here's Noah. Angle of elevation of 61 degrees, and that's a height. Let's call this X, and I'm going to label it on my diagram as well. NP is X. Okay? And then I have a second triangle that's attached to it where X is, and it looks something like this. Right? Here's that point below the rock. Here is Noah. Here is Cyril. And they're 75 meters apart. NP was X, we already said that, and this angle was 52 degrees. Okay, so it does help to redraw the triangles separately as well, flat, but we have to draw them together as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have seen that we've got X in both of these. Okay, now I'm going to try to solve for X first. Since this is missing X and H, I can't really solve for either of them. But in this one, I only have X that's missing, so I can solve for it, right? So again, I'm going to use 52 degrees. X, you can see, is the opposite. And I'll label it. And 75 meters is the adjacent. The hypotenuse is across from the 90, of course. So I know the adjacent and I want to know the opposite. So SOHCAHTOA. Oops, I can't spell. SOHCAHTOA. I know the opposite, or I want the opposite. I know the adjacent. So tan is the 1. Tan 52 degrees. equals x over 75. So moving the 75 over, because it was divided, I'm going to multiply. And you'll notice again that I always keep my degrees on there, and I'm also lining up my equal signs all the time. And using your calculator, you can find the answer. This is 96.0 meters. Again, rounding to 1 decimal place because I'm doing distances. And if you want to put that into your diagram, you can. My diagram is kind of tiny, so I'm not going to. Well, maybe I'll put it in here. 96.0. So now I've got x and I want to find h using 61 degrees. H is the opposite. Across from the p is the hypotenuse, so that makes this one the adjacent. So again, I'm going to use SOHCAHTOA and see that it is tan. So the more you do this, the less you need to use that mnemonic device. Tan 61 degrees is equal to opposite h over the adjacent 96. And then we're going to move the 96 up to the top times tan 61 degrees. Use your calculator and you get 173.2 meters. There you go. So the really difficult part about drawing these or doing these 3D trig questions is, first of all, identifying that it is 3D trig. And to identify that it's 3D trig, you have to know that there's going to be a vertical aspect and a horizontal aspect. Okay, things that give you a hint that it's vertical: angle of elevation, angle of depression. Things that tell you it's horizontal is like the cardinal directions, right? North, south, east, west. Is that what they are? Never eat shredded wheat, right? Sometimes we'll talk about bearing or an angle of separation. Okay, that tells you that you've got a 3D diagram. When you draw a 3D diagram, draw the height first, and then draw a triangle down here so that you can see the 3D-ness. Okay, and this is going to be a 90 because one is vertical and one is horizontal. Okay,